Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are looking at a new devblog for War Thunder, and this one is actually pretty cool because it's another Squadron vehicle that is going to be coming to the game, and it is a Squadron vehicle for America. Now before we get into the A-4E Skyhawk, I just want to do a quick mention. Just remember that they are doing Twitch drops in War Thunder over the weekend starting today, and I'm going to be doing 3 separate 12-hour streams, one today, one tomorrow, and one the next day, to give you guys as much chance as possible to be able to get those Twitch drops. So I'll be starting at 6:30 a.m. PST, so a little bit after this video. Make sure to check out the stream, link is in the description, and you can get yourself some awesome little prizes such as some decals and also some vehicles in game. So let's get started into the A-4E Skyhawk, or Heinemann's hot rod, as at least it's talked about here. Heinemann's hot rod grows up. I suppose we already have an A4 in game. Nice to see a slightly improved version of it. The history of it is also pretty interesting because it goes into not just the A4E, but also the A4B itself. It all starts at the beginning of the jet era and of course the escalation of the Cold War. This forced the US Naval Aviation Command to look for a replacement for their very successful carrier-based piston engine, the AD Skyraider, which was used for many years. The idea, though, was to create a vehicle which would have the possibility of delivering a tactical nuclear weapon in the area of operation of an aircraft carrier group. And with the beginning of the military campaign in Korea, the Douglas Aircraft Company began developing a carrier-based attack aircraft with an unconventional approach. Instead of pursuing engine power, usually bringing weight and large size to the aircraft, Heinemann's team concentrated on finding ways to lighten the construction and keeping it under 12,000 pounds, which is pretty good for a naval aircraft. The aircraft itself was fairly compact, lightweight jet fighter attacker with a delta-shaped wing and a competently lightweight design, and this is how the A4A Skyhawk was born, obviously the predecessor to the one that we already have in game. It was one of the first jet-based, carrier-based aircraft capable of carrying a nuclear bomb, and the aircraft was distinguished by its simplicity of design, practical controls with excellent flight characteristics for its time. Being simplistic is normally, at least in my opinion, a very good thing. Means that it's much easier to operate compared to other machines that you'll see around the place. So in 1956, the A4B version appeared. This was capable of carrying a huge variety of mounted weapons on 3 suspension points. This also included the guided missiles, which you can see in game. Then, the Skyhawk at the time had become a truly universal carrier-based aircraft. It was capable of solving the entire spectrum of tasks that the US Naval Aviation required, and also a rather noticeable drawback of the attack aircraft was still the limited range of action of it. Also, the armored types always wanted to increase the weapon load on the vehicle, for obvious reasons. If you can increase the weapon load, then you have to run less missions. In 1961, Douglas presented an improved version of the aircraft. This had 5 pylons for armaments, which you can see in the picture. It also had access to an increased range for the attack aircraft, and this was known as the A-4E. It became one of the most massive Skyhawk modifications and formed the image of a modern carrier-based attack aircraft. The E version was actively involved in the Vietnam War and also was used later until the end of the 80s. It was used to simulate enemy aircraft in training in dogfights, so even outside of its primary role, it also had some nice little kinks to it. So, when we look at this aircraft, what are we generally looking for? Well, the first thing to understand is it does have an upgraded engine. This thing has the J52P6. It is a more powerful and also a more economical engine for the United States. Now, generally, when it comes to this engine, it won't actually offer too much more power over the A4B engine, basically because, well, you're generally going to be carrying more armaments. Look at the underneath there of what's going on. There is a ton of stuff which this thing can carry. And that means that the engine itself, even though it is more powerful, it's going to be locked down by way more weight because of the additional weapons you're going to have on board. The weapons themselves, the primary is still the two 20mm Colt cannons. In my opinion, the Colt cannons are completely fine when it comes to the game. Generally, they work incredibly well, and especially since the A-4E gets an airborne, which I'm guessing this thing's going to as well, it just means that you're able to get to the combat area quickly, you are able to force a fight, and then be able to let your team carry into it, which is really nice. Other stuff that this thing can carry is obviously many different combinations of weaponry, mainly based around the AIM-9Bs, the Sidewinders, the air-to-air missiles, AGM-12Bs, which are of course the bullpups, and the improved ones, the AGM-12Cs, which are just ones with a much bigger boom. You can see them in this picture right here. And then also, this thing can carry up to 36 Zuni and 171 Mighty Mouse rockets, bombs of up to 2,000 pounds. This includes 14 500s that it can carry and 20 250-pounder combinations, and this means that the total payload of this vehicle is 7,000 pounds. You can also do additional gun pods if you want, so this machine will be able to carry pretty much any weaponry that you want to be able to take on it, which is always nice. And there is a few other things which also make this thing really nice to use. The general aspects of the machine, since it is labeled as an attacker, it will be able to get itself in the battle really quickly. It will be able to get up and about it very, very fast because of its airspawn that it will probably get, especially in ARB. And another thing that this has access to, which we're seeing being given to machines at a much lower BR than before, is this thing has access to flares. So it will have some kind of defenses against stuff such as other air-to-air missiles that are coming into it, which are becoming way more apparent, and, well, the BRs that this thing's going to find itself at are going to be incredibly strong. So overall, when you look at the machine itself, I think this is actually going to have a really nice place in the game. Obviously, the Skyhawk in the game has had its issues. You know, sometimes it struggles with the elevator working at high speeds, you know, above 1,000 or even above 900. Sometimes it struggles with its wings falling off, but I'm pretty sure that was eventually fixed. And sometimes it struggles in other areas too, especially if it's dealing with aircraft with crazy acceleration. But the main thing to understand when we look at the A-4E is it gives you a ton of options, whether it's in air realistic, or whether it's in ground realistic, or whether it's in any other game mode. The fact that this thing is able to carry so many different variants of weaponry basically means that no matter what situation you move yourself into, you are going to be able to get into it and do really well. The other thing as well is if this thing is around the same BR as the A-4B, or slightly above that BR, you have a really nice ground lineups that you can run this thing with, such as like the 10-0 American lineup. A lot of people, cry foul of the M1 Abrams and the IPM1, but for me personally, I've had great times in both of the machines, very fun. And then on top of it, you can get this thing with 4 bullpups, or 2 AGM, 2 of the 12Cs. That to me just sounds like an absolute wonderful combination. And the fact that you can control the battlefield in this thing because of its airspawn makes it just really interesting to me. And one of the things that I've learned while playing the A-4B, and also most recently playing stuff like the SK-60B, is how useful that airspawn is in air realistic, because it means that you can kind of guide the enemy where you want them to go. Because once they see you, if you're the first person they see, it's like bees around a honeypot, and then they move towards you, then you can kind of guide your team in, so therefore you get the initial advantage, not just as a player, but also as a team with a machine. And to have another vehicle for America, which will be able to do this, while also having the multi-role capability, just makes it really, really nice. And at the same time, when it comes to Squadron vehicles, well, at least for me, I've kind of run out of Squadron vehicles. Tech ES and Tech FS and Tech WS are three very good squadrons when it comes to grinding out the Squadron vehicles. They're very active squadrons. Hitting 20,000 research every 3 days means that you run out of vehicles very, very quickly. So it is always nice to see another Squadron vehicle, and also nice to bolster that high tier lineup that America has. Overall, I'm very happy to see this plane, and hopefully I'll catch you on the Twitch streams a little bit later. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Elove Goat, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez B. Young, and also Hans Fagellen, Sebastian Mizon, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.